tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, in the fall, a lot of things change. For example, if you're going to be applying Roundup, there are completely different rules that are in place than if you're spraying in the middle of the summer. We'll explain on today's show.
We'll also talk about how to fix high soil pH. And if you've got high soil pH, you've probably heard people tell you, oh, it can't be done. You can't fix your high soil pH. That's ridiculous. You absolutely can fix your high soil pH. We'll give you the steps today.
We'll also show you how to stop a tough weed. Our weed of the week is no fun, but we can get rid of it. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about soybean harvest moisture.
As farmers are harvesting their crops, there's a couple of concerns that they have. One is when they're hauling them into a grain elevator, for example, or a grain processor, they have a certain moisture percentage they'd like to see in that grain. So farmers want to try and hit that moisture percentage, but not any extra. Otherwise, the people buying the grain may dock them or give them less per bushel. The other thing for farmers as they're harvesting grain is they don't want too much moisture in the grain if they're going to put it into the bin. When they have grain that is too wet going into a storage bin, they could potentially have some spoilage.
This moisture percentage that the farmers are looking for when they're going to haul it into the elevator or into a processing plant is usually 13%. That's the ideal. Okay, so if the farmer hauls in 14% moisture soybeans, for example, they'll dock the farmer 1.5 to 3%, and it's usually the 3% figure. Okay, but here's the thing. The farmer, in effect, has hauled in a little bit more water. So even though it's 1% moisture difference, usually as a farmer, we figure 1.5% shrink for 1 point of moisture as we go down, and then also 1.5% gain as we go up per point of moisture. So we gained 1.5% more total soybeans when we hauled in 1% more grain. So if the elevator docks us 3% or discounts our price 3%, we say, well, no big deal. I gained 1.5% already, so I only lost 1.5%. It works the other way too, where if I haul in less than 13% moisture beans, I don't get any dock. I don't take any discount, but I've hauled in fewer beans because I have less moisture there. So let's say worst case scenario, sometimes soybeans will go all the way down to 8% moisture. Well, if I figure 1.5% shrink per point of moisture, that's 1.5 times 5 points of moisture less than the ideal of 13%. That's 7.5%. That's a really big deal. So let's say, for example, that my soybeans were worth $500 an acre. If I'm going to lose 7.5%, oh my goodness, I'm losing between $30 and $40 an acre, and I've got 1,000 acres. That's $30,000 to $40,000 I'm going to lose. That's a really big deal. So you can see why the farmer is so focused on, hey, I've got to be out there at the right time, and I'd way rather harvest 14% moisture beans than even 11 or 10% moisture beans because I'm going to come out money ahead.
The challenge for farmers is there isn't a wide window of time where you could take beans right at 13%. What happens a lot as soybeans mature, if you get hot, sunny, dry weather, the moisture percentage will drop quite quickly in those soybeans. So you may only have a day or even just a few hours where you could get those soybeans right at 13%. But the problem for farmers is they may have several fields. They may have variable soils within a field where on, say, some sandy soil, the soybeans may dry out quicker than on a heavy clay soil. So for farmers, as they're going through the field, they know there's going to be a variation in moisture. They know there's going to be some beans a little too wet, some a little too dry. So getting the timing just right on getting out in the field to maximize their profitability, the quality of the soybean seed if they're going to a processor, the moisture percentage that they're concerned about for storage, perhaps going to their grain bins. It's a tricky proposition for farmers.
We run into this same issue even on our own farm here, because I'm constantly saying, hey, we got to get out there really early. Well, the beans are a little tough today. In other words, it's hard to go through those stems. They may still be green. If we've done a great job on the farm, that means we've kept the plants alive all the way through the season and we haven't experienced premature death. So the soybean seed is ready to go, but the stems sometimes are still green. So then you have to slow down your combine. You have to listen to all this rumbling in the combine because you're beating up all this green stalk material. But that, hey, that's just the way it goes. That's part of the deal if you're doing a great job on the farm. And I don't mind, because usually that means we got higher yield. If you're a farmer and you say, well, I want to wait until those stems get dry, you may now be waiting until your seed gets too dry as well, and it's costing you lots of money on the farm. Well, having the right soybean moisture is incredibly important if the farmer wants top profits, but another thing that's important on every farm is weed control. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave pea. Most of your applied pea gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more pea available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing pea availability can lead to increased pea uptake in the plant. That's more pea, and more pea. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your pea with Avail.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
My data is mine, not mined.
Mine to share,
mine to keep.
It's mine when I want it.
Mine where I want it.
And only mine. My data is mine to analyze.
Mine to put to work.
Mine to control. It's mine.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
A proven herbicide for decades, Dicamba can provide burndown residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use Dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
One of my favorite topics to talk about is how to fix high soil pH, because a lot of people don't think it can be done, and it absolutely can be done. I'm not going to say it's cheap or easy or quick, but it absolutely can happen on your farm if you really want it to.
When you've got 25 or 30 crops where you're going to be the primary decision maker on your farm, why wouldn't you try to fix this? You've got a lot of time here and a lot of crops that are going to be impacted. Sure, if you just had 1 year and you said, hey, I've only got this ground for 1 year, I've got to try and maximize my profitability, fine. Maybe on a long-term fix, you don't invest the money. But when you have 20 or 30 crops that are going to be impacted by the decision that you make today, I just don't see any other way than fighting that high pH right now.
So here's the thing. You've basically got high pH for one of two reasons. One is poor drainage. That's a relatively easy fix. Again, not super quick or cheap. And then there's also, all right, my soil naturally has high pH. Usually that's because all my good topsoil got eroded off and now I'm farming subsoil. So we'll talk about fixing both of those situations. First, if it's poor drainage, when you have poor drainage, usually what you're going to find over time is your salt levels creep up, then your soil pH levels follow. We've seen this in many areas of the country over a long period of time. It didn't just happen overnight, but that poor drainage continued, got worse. Now we got to go deal with this many years later after it should have been fixed. The way you take care of this problem is putting some drain tile in the ground, and it absolutely can be done almost anywhere if you really want to do it. The heavier your soil, the higher your organic matter levels, the closer together your tile lines need to be. They might need to be 20, 25 feet apart. I don't know. It just depends on your soil type. In many soils, 40 or 50 feet apart with those tile spacings is fine. But the point is, you've got to get good drainage out there. That's the first step to fixing that issue. Then the next thing, if you want to lower that pH, is if you don't already have excess sulfur in your soil, add some sulfur out there. And I'm talking about elemental sulfur. That absolutely can lower your soil pH regardless of what the conditions are and what the cause is, whether it was the poor drainage, whether it was the, hey, now I'm farming subsoil situation. Either way, put some elemental sulfur out there that can lower your soil pH.
Well, it's not a long-term fix. It's not like you're going to apply elemental sulfur one time and your pH is going to stay down forever, but it's going to bring that pH down at least for a short period of time. Perhaps it's going to be for a month or two, maybe for a season, depending on how high your pH is and a lot of different factors.
All right, here's the next thing. Take a look at your base saturation calcium percentage. Unless that calcium percentage is above 65%, you probably need to add some lime or calcium sulfate, which is gypsum. Get some more calcium out there, raise your calcium percentage. If I've got lots of calcium out there, I have much better pore space, a much better chance for that water to quickly filter down through my soil and get down to my tile lines and end up out of the field. If I start at 8.5 pH to get down to a 7, I'd say we're looking at between 10 and 20 years after I fix the drainage, after I've gotten elemental sulfur out, after I've taken care of the I need more calcium thing. This is not a short-term deal, this is a long-term fix, but you absolutely can get this done. You just have to start by fixing the drainage problem, get some tile out there. When we start talking about this other situation where, let's say that my soil naturally has high pH. Usually that means you've lost your topsoil, you're farming subsoil. Doesn't always work that way, but that's generally what we see. So if that's the case, what do we need to do? We need to build new topsoil. Is that going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. Okay, this is a 10, 20, 30-year fix, but we can do this. You can build new topsoil, and here's what we want you to do. We want you to reduce tillage, so either go to no-till or strip-till. Then we want you to plant nothing but high residue, high rooting crops. So we're talking about corn here, maybe wheat, for example. We want lots of roots down in that soil, and we want to leave them as undisturbed as possible to try to build the organic matter.
Cover crops in between, so we keep root mass out in the field and we keep things growing and we protect the soil that way too.
Absolutely. Then as much as you can, use manure, use biological products, and finally, something you might not have thought about a lot, but when you're planting nothing but corn and wheat, you know, these crops that have lots of roots, they're also grass crops that need what? Lots of nitrogen. Well, when you put lots of nitrogen out over time, that's going to slowly lower your pH as well. So we want to make sure we have good sulfur levels, just like we talked about before. Use some elemental sulfur, but even use some ammonium sulfate, use regular sulfur too. Have good sulfur levels, have good nitrogen levels, raise these crops, and over time, you'll build topsoil, you'll lower that pH, but it's just a long-term fix.
And if you've got erosion issues, that may mean putting in some terraces. It may mean changing the direction that you're farming through that field to go across the sides of those hills instead of up and down. That may mean splitting the field up into some different chunks so you can go crossways on those hills to try and reduce erosion. It may not be the easiest to farm that way, but that might be what you have to do. Certainly reducing tillage is another way to protect your soils and reduce erosion.
And the big thing is we talk often in agriculture about how we want to leave our land and the environment in general in better condition for the next generation. Here's your chance. Here's your chance to make a difference with your life and what you're doing on your farm. Fix that high soil pH. You absolutely can get it done.
Well, one other thing you certainly have to get done right now this year is controlling our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed coming up later in the show.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
The world of farming is changing. Titan Machinery and Case IH are here to make sure you're ready. The demands on agriculture keep growing. The challenge for producers is to continue to keep pace. To be successful, you'll need equipment that can get the most out of every inch of land, innovations that help you work faster, and advice from people who know your field as well as they know your equipment. Don't get left behind. Be ready with Case IH and Titan Machinery. Better solutions.
Some prefer to invest in fields halfway around the world, in short-term solutions to long-term challenges. At Poet, we're investing in the fields we have right here at home, cultivating communities and growing the local economy, creating new local jobs while we create worldwide energy solutions, helping family farms grow even as they fuel the world. Because we know that investing in a community can pay global dividends. See the world differently with Poet.
Being a farmer means securing your land and livelihood for the future. Harvest Solutions from Capello USA have the grit to get you there. Our product lines for corn, sunflowers, and forage are designed for efficiency and longevity, preventing harvest loss while minimizing maintenance and downtime. To do everything you can to advance your farmland to the next generation, call us at 855-CAPELLO or visit us at capellousa.com. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Diversity, in a word. That sums up really the best way to try and manage any of these glyphosate or any of these herbicide-resistant weeds, not just glyphosate-resistant weeds, is using a diverse set of tactics, both with herbicides and culturally, to keep them off balance, to keep those resistance from developing on a field.
We're going to talk a little bit about fall Roundup applications, and before we get talking about anything else, let me just first say that Roundup works a lot better before your first start killing frost than afterwards.
I was thinking when you're not quite so cold. It's a little cool out here this morning as we're filming.
It's the same thing in the fall as in the spring. When the weather's cold, our rule has always been if the nighttime temp's going to drop below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, you've got to increase your rate by 50% to get the same effectiveness as when the weather's warm.
Well, that's the big thing. We want to look at, we need actively growing weeds, and when things get colder out there, we're going to have to change some things up with our Roundup application. You've got to get that Roundup into the weed quickly and get a lethal dose to each growing point before the plant can work the Roundup off.
We often get people talking about how fall is the best time to kill weeds, but we don't necessarily agree with that. Especially in the northern part of the country, the frost, the first hard-killing frost, might come before fall even starts. Late summer in the northern U.S. might be a better date for killing some of these fall weeds. What happens is the plant not only slows down in general, but also it's just very difficult to move the lethal dose to each and every growing point because some of those points are now cut off from the main part of the plant after that frost.
So when conditions aren't ideal, there's a number of things that we can do to try and improve the performance of our herbicide application. For example, we may look at the adjuvants that we're using. Is this one that's going to penetrate that leaf quicker? Is it one that's going to hold the product on there longer and help it perform a little bit better? We may change up the tank mix partners.
Whoa. Let's get specific here. And when we're talking about spray adjuvants, here's exactly what we want you to do. Use ammonium sulfate at 17 pounds per 100 gallons of water and use non-ionic surfactant at 1 to 2 quarts per 100 gallons of water. If conditions aren't ideal, how do we improve performance? Well, it's nice to talk about adjuvants, but let's face it, we're still dealing with the active ingredient Roundup. It's still not going to work very well. So let's talk about tank mix partners real quick.
Okay, well, common tank mix partners, probably the most common would be 2,4-D. If you're out trying to burn things down that are broadleaf plants, 2,4-D is certainly going to add a quicker burn. It's going to work much quicker in the plant than what Roundup is, and so that's one that you look at right away. But the downside of adding a tank mix partner like a 2,4-D is how much activity you're really going to get out of the Roundup. If you burn the plant and you're aggressively burning it with a 2,4-D, and especially at a higher rate of 2,4-D, your uptake of Roundup may be diminished. So there is a balance there of you can put some 2,4-D in, but how much is too much? And if you're going to get to a high rate, you may just want to go straight 2,4-D.
I disagree, because if you're also trying to kill some grasses out there at that point, the 2,4-D isn't going to do much for the grasses. So the reason why you would want to go a high rate of 2,4-D and at least keep some Roundup in the tank is to make sure you're still getting that grass control. It just depends on what your situation is. But yeah, if I'm really after a perennial weed and I'm way before the first hard killing frost, at least a couple of weeks, then you know what? I'm just going with a high rate of Roundup, the maximum labeled rate, 2 or 3 quarts, whatever I can put on there, and I'm going to try to really hammer that perennial weed, and I'm going to forget all about the 2,4-D. Don't even use it.
Okay,
because like Darren says, you're going to shut that plant down before the Roundup can really get through the perennial root system.
Okay, we'll take on this question then. Here's a real common one we get into fall. I've got alfalfa. I want to plant a different crop next year. Should I burn it down now, or should I wait until the spring?
Absolutely get it done now, because if you let that go, it's sucking up more water and nutrients. That's not a good thing for next year's crop. The water's the biggest deal. Alfalfa is going to grow late in the fall. It's going to grow early in the spring. It's going to suck water out of your ground, and early in the season, you're going to be short of water if you're in a drier area of the country. Obviously, if it's irrigated, it's no big deal, but we'd still rather see that killed off in the fall. And if you're at least a couple weeks ahead of the first hard killing frost, I'd absolutely use nothing but straight Roundup, as high a rate as I can, the highest labeled rate. If you are around that first killing frost time or after, then I would maybe leave some Roundup in there to burn some grasses down, but otherwise I'd go a high rate of 2,4-D or Dicamba. Personally, I like using a full quart of Banville. That's my favorite thing for killing alfalfa in the fall if I'm too late for Roundup.
Well, there's certainly a lot of considerations when you're spraying Roundup in the fall. We'd like to be out a couple of weeks before the first hard killing frost. We'd like to spray high rates of straight Roundup at that point, but you may have to adjust and put in some adjuvants. You may have to put in some tank mix partners to try and get the maximum effectiveness of your herbicide.
Well, one of the weeds you might be after when spraying fall Roundup is our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you the best plan to stop it on your farm coming up next.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
Our Weed of the Week is Canada Thistle.
As far as identification of this weed, I don't think we need to talk about it at all. Control is where it's all at. Now, we just got done talking about Roundup. You can certainly use high rates of Roundup, but if you've already had your first hard killing frost, you may switch up and use 2,4-D.
Well, 2,4-D is fine. Personally, I'd rather go with Banville. I'd like to see a quart of Banville in the fall. If I'm in crop ground that's going to go to corn the next year, I get a little worried with spraying that much Banville in the fall if I'm going to go to soybeans though. So in that case, yeah, then I'd probably want to go with 2,4-D. I might go with a quart or quart and a half of LV6. All we're trying to do here is burn down that top growth, get a little bit of activity on the perennial root system, because Banville and 2,4-D most likely are not going to fully kill the perennial root system, but if I can really damage it, maybe I get some extra winter kill and I'm in better shape going into the next year. Let's talk about pastures real quick.
Okay, pastures and non-cropland, we have two products that will get down into that root system and do a great job controlling Canada Thistle. In fact, they could perhaps wipe out the whole patch if that patch stays intact. If there's no tillage done and the root systems are all held together like we see in pastures and non-cropland, I really like Tordon, but even better is Milestone.
The disadvantage with Tordon, while there are several disadvantages, it's restricted use, it kills trees, it kills fish. It's very safe to humans, don't get me wrong, and livestock too, but still, Milestone's a little better choice because not only is it slightly better on thistles, it is not as harmful to trees. There's some trees you can even spray it around. It's not as harmful to fish, and it's not restricted use.
And when we talk about our Weed of the Week, Canada Thistle, it's a primary noxious weed. You have to, by law, get this thing under control, and it can really devastate all the vegetation around it. So don't let it get away from you. Spray a full rate the first time that you're out spraying. Don't ding the weed up and try and control it later. You want to spray a full rate, and doing it right now is a great time of year to get it done.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, Canada Thistle, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
Our industry-leading SCR technology has powered over 35,000 pieces of equipment with over 17 million operating hours in North America alone. Case IH, proven power, proven efficiency, proven in the field.
As crops get harvested and soil temperatures come down, fertilizing next year's crop becomes a big focus. With the likelihood of more soybean acres again next year, the question many are asking is, what's the best way to fertilize soybeans? I'll share something we learned on soybean fertility in today's Iron Talk. We do a lot of research on our farm. There are split planter experiments with multiple varieties or multiple treatments of this or that. Then there are the small replicated plots. One of the things we did in small replicated plots was to try placing soybean fertilizer in different locations to see the response. Depending on how you do it, you could add 2x2 placement of fertilizer, that's 2 inches to the side and 2 inches below where you're planting your seed, for about $250 per row on your planter. We did just that on our small plot planter this spring. One of the reasons I wanted to do it was to begin placing soybean fertilizer in a band outside the seed furrow. Sure, we've done it with fall strip tillage and placed the fertilizer 8 to 10 inches deep for years and it's worked great, but what about doing it in the spring with the planter? Well, there's only one way to find out. We haven't harvested the soybeans yet, but the pod counts are considerably higher where we put fertilizer in a 2x2 compared to where we left the plots either untreated or put the fertilizer in the furrow. Banding has consistently given us more efficiency than broadcasting, especially with nutrients like phosphorus that are easily tied up in the soil. When we get the yield data, we'll likely be talking about it and quite a bit if the yield is as dramatically better as the plants have looked this year. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDrive Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan run times drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
There's no clock on this job. Just the timeless hands of intuition and effort, ticking from within. An endless cadence of committed work, from the passing of Mother Nature's final frost to the hanging dew at harvest. Around here, wheels are always turning, and watches need no winding, because success never rests.
We know that the future is liquid. That's why Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers corporate sales force is the best trained, best equipped in the industry. Because our communications, our relationships, our ethics are as strong and as innovative as the products we design. That's why our customers trust us. Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers, helping you grow the future.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a SOILMAX Gold Digger tile plow. SOILMAX tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a SOILMAX Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with SOILMAX. Visit soilmax.com.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but for more agronomic information, be sure to tune in to Ag PhD Radio from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 80.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Organic matter improves soil structure and tilth. It improves microbial activity and soil life. Organic matter allows soils to hold more water and nutrients for your crop. To learn more about building it, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.